Hi, I'm Rick White with Alpine Optics, and I want to talk to you today about the new Alpen Shastridge binoculars. Now, they're lighter than the older Shastridges, new sleek design, fog-proof, waterproof, BAK4 prisms, phase-coated, and the lenses are multi-coated. Inexpensive pair of binoculars with great quality. So if you're looking to save a little money, but still put quality in your backpack, make sure you check out the Alpen Shastridge binoculars. You know, here we are midsummer here in Iowa, and I'm just out doing some scouting, glassing deer, kind of taking an inventory of what I've got, and doing it from a distance. I've got one of the new Alpine spotting scopes. It's a 20 by 60, but one of the things I really like about this, it comes with a tripod, and it's got micro adjustments, so it's real easy to zoom in and move around and find those animals. But basically, this is a great tool to help me manage the farm all year round. If you're looking for a great way to do some scouting, do it in the evening from a distance with a nice spotting scope. Let's talk a little bit about Alpine and Bresser optics. Now, they have a full line of optics, but what I want to talk to you now about is rangefinders. They have several different varieties of handheld rangefinders and the new bow rangefinder. Now, for you bow hunters, you go ahead and sight in at 20 yards and you calibrate it to your 20-yard pin, and when you're at full draw, whatever you point in that 20-yard pin on an object, it'll tell you the yardage. So whether you like a handheld or you want to put one on your bow, we have both options for you here at Alpine and Bresser Optics. Well, I'm out doing a little bit of late evening scouting, just looking for deer and waiting for them to come out into the field. But I've got a new pair of Alpen Teton binoculars. You know, a lot of times people will ask me, what binoculars are best in low light situations? Well, that's simple. The answer is the Alpen Teton binoculars. And the reason for that is they have the Abbey Koenig prism, which simply means it allows 94% of available light to get through these binoculars, making them an excellent pair of binoculars in low light. So if you're looking for a pair of binoculars that will see detail into a dark timber right now, this time of the evening, make sure you check out the Alpen Teton binoculars. You'll be glad you did. Oh, here's some deer coming out right now. Turkey hunting is, how do I set up my decoys? Now, there's lots of different ways to set up your decoys. First of all, I'm in the timber, I use decoys maybe 20–30% of the time. Now, when I'm hunting field edges, I use them almost 100% of the time. I like to use a jake and 2 hens, and that's what I've got today. This is kind of a traditional spot that I would set up for like a gun hunt. I usually stick my decoys out 15 to 20 yards. Now, when I'm bow hunting, I put my decoys very close, within 10 yards. And I'll always point the jake right at my setup, because 9 times out of 10 when them gobblers come in, they come in head to head. And if they do, I've got a gobbler looking straight away from me, less than 10 yards, allowing me to draw my bow and get a good shot. So however you like to do it, sometimes I'll use a jake and 1 hen. Now, if I experience gobblers coming in and spooking just a little bit, a lot of times I'll just take my jake out of my decoy spread, and that usually takes care of it. And that's why I like to always have at least 2 hens with me, whether I use them both at the same time or not. At least I have them. So again, great setup. Now, when you're thinking about safety, make sure that when you do set your decoys up, you can see beyond your decoys pretty good distance in a straight line, because that's the only danger of a hunter sneaking in and you getting shot is in a straight line. So if you're on the knoll, you know, on a like maybe a little knoll or something, I wouldn't set your decoys right on top to where you can't see approaching danger. Just something to keep in mind. So that's what I like to do. That's what works for me. Hopefully it'll work for you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to On the Hunt with Alpine Optics. I'm your host, Rick White, and tonight we have Mr. Wingbone himself, Edwin Shirts from Burlington, Iowa, as a guest, and we're going to talk about several different things, and we have another great special at the end of the show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with you. Hope everybody's having a great evening. Once again, you're watching On the Hunt with Alpine Optics. I'm your host, Rick White. And as I mentioned, tonight's guest comes all the way from Southern Iowa, and Mr. Wingbone himself, Edwin Shirts. Edwin, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good, Rick. I'm glad I'm in the air conditions tonight. And I'm glad the storm that came through didn't take the power lines down around our house, because those people without the air conditioner right now are suffering with 102-degree heat today.
Yeah, we've got some storms brewing up around here too, so I'm hoping it'll cool off a little bit. But now I know you've been on the show before, but give the folks just a little information on yourself.
Well, I've been turkey hunting for about 20 years. I've been deer hunting a little bit longer than that, and I'll tell you what. During that course, starting out my early hunting career, I got into starting to experiment with making calls. I started with wingbone calls. I moved into a little bit of deer antlers, built myself a wood shop, and now I'm turning friction calls, and I got deer calls and squirrel calls as well.
Well, that's fantastic. You know, we've got a great show planned for you this evening, and a few of the topics we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about self-filming, and I know we've talked about these in some other shows, but I always like to get different people's perspectives on certain subjects. So we're going to talk a little bit about self-filming. We're going to talk about trail cam placement and some of your ideas and my ideas on what makes a great place to put a trail cam. And then we're going to talk about deer calls and calling deer. And I know that's something right up your alley as well. So anyways, let's get the show started with talking a little bit about self-filming. Now, Edwin, you're not only do you run a camera and hunt in front of a camera, but you edit as well. So that makes you a pretty good authority on what it is you want to see in a hunt, so that you can edit it in a way that makes it a great hunt. Really tells the story. So what are some of the biggest, say, downfalls that you see with people that are trying to film themselves on a hunt?
But the biggest downfall, I think, self-filming, and you know firsthand, Rick, you're a self-filmer as well, is trying to get the camera to stay on the animal as it's coming in. Because like my camera, it requires two hands. I got one on the front with the focus, and I got my zoom and handle for panning on the back. So I don't have any hands free for the weapon. So I have to make a choice when I'm filming. Do I want to focus on that animal, or do I want to plan a spot where I'm going to possibly shoot that animal, turn the camera, wait for him to come into the screen? Now, as an editor from that standpoint, it makes it a little difficult to throw together a quality hunt on a self-film, but you can still make a decent hunt for people to watch and enjoy if the things fall into place just right.
You know, I've self-filmed a lot of turkey hunts, and they're, quite honestly, they're a lot easier to self-film than, say, a deer hunt or some other things. But one of the things to keep in mind, first of all, we've always talked about good audio is as important as good video. So make sure you've got good audio. But, nowadays with these new cameras, these new 4K cameras, you can actually stay wider on the animal, which helps you trying to get that shot when you're self-filming. And then in the edit studio, because of 4K, it allows you to zoom in and bring that animal in a lot closer. So that might be something to consider. Make sure that you're filming, obviously, with a tripod or a tree arm. That also helps. And, you can always, the most important thing is getting the actual animal coming in the shot and all that stuff, and then the recoveries, because you don't have a second chance to go back and recreate all that stuff. Anything else that you've recreated in the tree and made some mistakes, you can go back and kind of fix that later on. I mean, would you agree?
Yes. And that's one thing, like when we do recoveries, we'll do 4 or 5, because we might pick something out of one recovery that's good, add it to another part and make it flow more better, because, we're human. Sometimes we get a little tongue tied, we get a little caught up in the moment. And I know firsthand when I'm at that point where I've harvested an animal, my heart's pounding so fast, my brain's going 90 miles an hour. And I sit down at the computer to start editing. I'm like, oh man, I should have done this, or I should have done that. So having a checklist maybe beforehand could help you. Being inside of a blind is definitely going to help you self-filming, because there's a lot of movement. It could be done outside of a blind, but you got to take other precautions to try and hide that tripod, hide the camera, make it disappear into the wood line or wherever you're sitting.
Right. So, now I know you've been editing pretty well nonstop here lately, and we've you actually are working on our new project, Through the Eyes of a Hunter, Just Hunting. And I'd like to ask our viewers this question. We're actually putting a video together. It's called Just Hunting, but it has a variety of different types of hunts. It's got X amount of deer hunts with some turkey hunts and some predator hunts, all on one video. And typically your videos are animal specific. So I'd really be interested on hearing what our viewers have to say about that. And we'll have that video out here, I'd say in the next month or so. But anyway, so some good tips on self-filming. So let's talk a little bit about trail cams. I mean, this is the time of the year. I know lots of people that have them up already, and I know a lot of people that are just getting ready to put them up. What are some of your favorite locations and tricks and, of putting up trail cams in good areas?
I like to set early season when I'm scouting and I haven't really picked a spot to hunt. I'm going to look for a spot where I've got trails intersecting, and I'm going to try and catch a couple different trails coming to and from food, to and from water, to and from bedding. Them are the 3 things the deer are looking for: is food, water, and bedding. And as hot as it is in the summer, they don't want to move too far. So if I'm walking and checking the spot and I bump a deer, I want to know what it's doing there. That's either the bedding, was it transitioning, was it feeding, was it drinking? And I'm going to look for those 3 sources early season. Now, once hunting starts and then there's pressure, I do a lot of public hunting for my deer here in Burlington, in Des Moines County. And once the hunting pressure starts, then you got to start looking for other signs like fresh rubs, fresh scrapes, bedding. If there's snow on the ground, you can locate a bed pretty easy. But those are the 3 things I'm going to look for when placing a trail camera out, to gather information.
Right. Here's a little tip for you. You talk about food sources, and you're absolutely right. Food sources are an important part of where I place my trail cams. But here in the Midwest, we have a bumper crop of acorns this year. So as you might be going out and thinking about spots to put that up, you may just put them around a big old oak tree, white oak tree, because here before long, acorns are going to start dropping, and those deer are going to be in those oak groves. So just something to think about. But I look for down fences. I get on travel routes, but like you said, food and water, and pinch points and bottlenecks and all those. But one thing that I find that helps me out a lot is multiple trail cameras. I used to be one that would go out and just put up one trail camera on a piece of property. And, and I go back to the old days, Edwin, and you do too, back when we used to have the trail cams that were actually 35 millimeter cameras. And,
Yeah.
I'd run to the store and I'd take my 12 exposure film in and pay, $5, $6, and I'd get 12 photos, and 3 of them were doe and does, and the rest of them were raccoons. And you thought, wow, this is great. And it cost me $5 or $6 to find that out. But nowadays trail cams are inexpensive, some of them, and they're good quality, and it's so easy to view them. Multiple cameras, because they tell me when I'm getting photos of the same deer in different areas, it kind of starts to show me what their travel pattern is.
Exactly.
And not to interrupt here, but I just want to throw this out there. We actually still have a special going on that's on our website, bresserusa.com. It's been on for this month. Goes through Sunday, but our trail cam, we have 2 trail cams, and this one is the one that does not have date and time. And I don't have the model number just off the top of my head, but it is a buy one, get one free. First of all, it's cheaper than it normally is. It's selling for $40, but it's buy one, get one free. You buy 4, you get 2 free, and so on. So make sure you check out that. That's just a regular deal that we've had on the website, and it actually goes through this coming Sunday. So Edwin, what else can you add about trail cams?
What type of animal are you looking for? Now, like when I set my trail cams out in the spring, like I'm looking for turkey, I'll set them a little lower to the ground because the turkeys aren't as tall as deer. And I want that camera to trigger a turkey. Now, I get a lot of belly shots of deer coming through and stuff, but my turkey shots, when the turkeys come by, they're there. So the height of your camera can play a big part of whether you're getting photos or not getting photos. Typically for turkey, I'll set it about 2.5 to 3 foot off the ground. Deer, I go about at least 4 foot.
Right. And our trail cams our Bresser trail cam, when you turn it on, the first 30 seconds in the screen, it actually shows you what you're going to be taking a photo of. So I really like that, because especially if I've got another person with me, I can kind of get them out walking on the trail and I can adjust it and I can see them very well. It also has a rigid back, like a half moon. So you can adjust it so it's pointed down or pointed up or pointed straight out, depending on the tree that you have. So
because as well as I do, there's not too many perfectly straight trees out there.
No, that's exactly right. And it gives you a photo burst of 3 photos. So whenever it takes a photo, you're going to get a photo burst. And so, you get a lot of doe photos, but when you get that nice buck in there, you're going to get at least 3 photos of him before he's gone. Right. So, I like that as well. Plus it's an IR. So, food sources, great places. Like you said, water this time of year when it's hot, these deer are going to water. And it's easy to, as thick as it is around here, with the tall weeds and stuff, it's pretty easy to figure out the travel routes. So, right. I think those are all valid, good points. Anything else you could add at all?
Well, I want to touch a little bit about the special you talked about the cameras that don't have the date and time stamp. So anybody that's going to get in on this special, here's what I do with those cameras, because daytime photos is what I'm after anyway. I love to get nighttime photos, but I can't do nothing with them. It doesn't tell me nothing. That deer's there in the middle of the night. I'm at home sleeping. But I like to face my cameras to the north or to the south, directly north or south, because the shadows, now on a cloudy day, it's a little tough, but the shadows are going to tell me in that photo what type of day, what type of morning it is. So if you got the camera facing south, the sun comes up in the east, your shadows are going to be going to the right of the photo if you get a photo. In the afternoon on a southern facing camera, your shadows are going to be coming back to the east, which tells you that's an afternoon photo. And then if you look at your photos enough, you can kind of determine if it's early morning, midday, or mid-afternoon, you know what I'm saying? Right. And vice versa on a northern facing camera.
Right. They're just, if you just want an inventory of your deer and to see what you have, these are great cameras. Our Generation 2 camera has the date and time and actually comes with an SD card. So it's a great value as well. All right, Edwin, let's talk about calling deer. Now, I know you're a turkey call manufacturer. I mean, I use your calls. I love your calls. And but you started making deer calls here, I think a couple of years ago. And you have a great grunt call, but you have a wooden grunt call and an acrylic grunt call if you want a custom call. And I've got one. They're cool looking. And I know you've got some examples of them. Let's see them.
Yes. I've got an acrylic call right here. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a 3-color call. And it's black, gold, and green, and it's got some sparkles. And the guy that I go through for my acrylic has over 1,000 different pigments. So you can pick basically any 3 colors. You can go up to 5 colors, but I think 3 is about pushing it. It gets the call pretty busy, and they have a great sound. All of my deer calls come apart, and there's an adjustable reed on here with an O-ring. You can go from buck all the way up to fawn and go through every vocalization of the white-tailed deer. And I just love them, and they sound great. That's the buck. Now here's the doe. The reed came out. You'll have that, I guess. That's my personal call. Wow. Wow. So that's a doe. That's the acrylic call. Now on the wooden calls, I've got several different designs. This is one of the early designs, so it's a little longer. We've improved them and shortened them up so they're not as big and bulky, but they are adjustable as well from buck all the way to fawn. This is a walnut. I've got 4 different kinds of woods that I use. I use walnut, cherry, oak, red cedar, and I also have a pecan. So it's 5 actually. But anyway, the walnut call I entered in 2018 in the Grand National Call Makers Contest for the NWTF, and it took first place. So at that level, to make a call to take first place, I think that it's won the hearts of a lot of people. And I know I don't go to the woods without my all wooden grunt. You'll notice that the acrylic call has a little bit of a snappier tone. The wooden calls are a little softer and more subtle, but still very effective. Can you tell that it's a little softer hearing it from your end?
Yep, absolutely. And you know, I have an acrylic call just to have one. But honestly, when I go to the woods, I take my wooden grunt call. That's the one.
They're lighter. They're a little lighter.
I have my thoughts on calling deer, but let's hear yours.
Okay, early season, I'm going to do maybe a fawn bleat early season because the fawns may have got separated from their mother and they're looking for their mom. So that can attract deer if you're going to blind call. I try not to call a deer if I can see it. If it gets out of sight behind a tree or something, and it's at least 100 yards or further, I'll call to it. But if there's a 100-yard barrier, I don't call to the animal because the sound's coming from a tree. Normally I'm up above them and it's not real to them unless you're on a hillside. You know, circumstances can play different when you're calling to them, but early season, I like to do a fawn. And then when we get closer to the rut, my favorite thing to do is a tending grunt with a doe and then a breeding grunt. It's just effective. And then you could go into rattling sequence and all kinds of stuff. But when you're blind calling deer, every 10 to 15 minutes during the heavy rut action is a good practice.
Yeah. Now me, you know, I typically, when I'm buck hunting, 95% of the time, I use a grunt call as a mature buck. And that's just me. Now, if I'm going to go out and it's early season, say here in Iowa, our season opens up the 1st of October, and I'm going to maybe shoot a few does. I'll use doe grunts, work well, but I have more luck calling bucks in with a mature buck grunt than I do doe grunts. And I'm not against using a doe grunt. Now, when I get late in the season, after the rut, sometimes I'll go to some doe grunts a little bit. And I might, when they're locked down in that lockdown phase, I like to sometimes throw those fawn bleats out there because generally that time of the year, those fawns have been run off the does. And, you know, those does are protectant of their fawns, and they want those fawns. And a lot of times those does will come running looking for their fawns, and a lot of times the bucks following along. So there's no right or wrong. There's not calling too much or calling too little. However, I would say and you hit the nail on the head, I never grunt at a deer that's looking in my direction. Okay. And I might grunt at a deer and he looks at me and then he maybe turns his head back and I'll grunt again. And, you know, he may take another step and stop. He hears it and he's looking around. And when he starts to walk again, grunt again. But if he's looking at me or in my direction, I don't call to him. And I like to call early in the season when I can see the deer. So I'm watching the reaction of the deer. But as we get closer to the rut, I blind call, like what you were saying. I'll rattle and grunt, maybe every 10 minutes, maybe every hour. It just depends on what responses I'm getting on a given day. I remember one day in the woods, I grunted and rattled in 12 different bucks one morning. I went back to the same spot the next day and grunted and rattled and didn't call any in. So it really just depends on the day. So you never know what you're going to get into when you're calling.
That's right. That's right. But it's so much fun. It's the anticipation of, man, what's coming next? I just saw a decent buck. Is there one bigger following him? It's just the excitement. And I love to call animals. I started calling animals with my grandfather when I was a little kid. We was using squirrel calls. And Grandpa would give me that squirrel call, and I'd just sit there and I'd smack on it and just have a fun time sitting there calling to animals. And I don't know. I guess that's why I became a call maker, is because it's so much fun to see that animal react to a sound I'm making and imitating their vocal patterns. It's so much fun in the fall to call to them. You can get so many different reactions. I've had people tell me they take turkey calls deer hunting with them because like when they're walking in the woods, it sounds like a turkey. So they might walk and do a little turkey call. And when they're walking to their tree stand, to kind of maybe an animal in the distance hears these footsteps, think, oh, it's just a turkey. It's cool. So I don't know. There's all kinds of tricks that you can do with calling. Just practice and have fun with it. The way I learned is get out there and do it.
Right. I want to give a shout out to a few people that are watching right now. Eddie Ash is on there, and Phil Smith, and Steve Herndon, and Brian Caston, and Reese Every, if I pronounce that right. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. But I see those folks have made some comments here just in the past few minutes, so we appreciate all those folks watching and joining us. Yeah, I mean, calling, a grunt call. I can't tell you how many times I've left the house or left the farm and I'm partway to my stand and realize that I forgot my grunt call. That is one item that I will almost always turn around and go back and get. I do not want to be in the tree stand. Number one, I don't want to be in the stand without my bow. I don't want to be in the stand without a good pair of binos. And I don't want to be in the stand without my grunt call. Those are three important things. And and fellow pro staff member Mike McDonald, I'm hoping that maybe one of these days when he goes and films me, he forgets to bring his cell phone because he spends more time on his cell phone. But no, a cell phone. We talked about safety in the tree stand in Deer Woods last week, and a cell phone, making sure you have a cell phone with you is certainly one of those items. But you've been making deer calls for a while, and I've used them and I love them. But what do you sell your grunt calls for?
Well, the acrylic calls are I have them on the website for $125. The acrylic is a little pricey to buy, and so that's the reason that they're a little bit higher. The wooden deer calls are $45. They're very reasonable. They're not going to break the bank, and they're going to give you great results in the woods, I can promise you. Last year, we had our first ever buck photo contest for Mr. Wingboat's Calls, and I had about 12 entries. And there was one gentleman that had purchased an acrylic deer call off me last year. His name is Randy Rippenfroger. He lives here in Southern Iowa. And he won the contest with his brand new acrylic call. He took it out and he went the first time and had a bunch of buck encounters. And he told me that he had this giant buck on camera and he was waiting for it. The next day he goes out, uses that acrylic grunt call and calls in this buck, just ecstatic. And part of the things I love about being a custom call maker is hearing stories like that. I love to hear your stories. I find more joy in that than as much as I do getting out there myself. You know.
Yeah, you know, now Edwin, I hate to put you on the spot, but I love doing this.
All right, let's do it.
Would you donate a grunt call to somebody that's watching the show tonight? Would you do that?
Yes, I would.
I knew it. I knew it. When I put them on the spot, they always say yes. So
now it's one catch, Rick. One catch. I get to pick the call, because if you leave it in their hands, you can wait for days.
it would be a grunt. It would be a wooden grunt call. And so all the folks that are watching tonight, anybody that comments on the show through this weekend, we'll say, anybody that comments, whether it's hey, throw me into the drawing, or how you doing, or hi, we'll automatically put their names in for a drawing, and we'll give them a Mr. Wingbone's grunt call, and we'll want to hear back on how it went. But Edwin, here, let me jump into the weekly special.
All right.
And let me talk a little bit about that, then we'll come back. But so we have a weekly special this week. It's the Kodiak Model 829 10x42 binoculars. Okay, regular price $169.99. The weekly special this week is half off, which brings it down to $85. The Kodiak 829 10x42s. I mean, $89 or $85. I'm sorry, $85 for a pair of binoculars that you can throw in your pack, have in the deer woods, have in your vehicle. You know, I don't know about you, Edwin, but I've always got 3 or 4 pair of binoculars. So one's in my vehicle, and one's in my pack, one's in my turkey vest, you know, one's in my car, you know, so you know, I'm not having to, because I always forget if I have to transport one to another place to another, I'll end up going to a spot and not having one. But anyways, half price, $85. All you've got to do is go to bresserusa.com or the Alpen.com website, and in the promo code, order the binoculars, the Kodiak 829, and in the promo code, just put "on the hunt" low casing with no spacing, and you'll get half off through Sunday at midnight. I mean, just another great special. And trust me, we've got so many great optics, and we try to give a really good weekly special every week. And, you know, you always hear me saying, oh, it's another great weekly special, but, you know, there's not a weekly special that's not good. So, and I know you like the binos, you use them, Edwin. I mean, you can.
Yes, I do. I love the binos, man. Low light. I see more deer now that I'm using the Alpen ProStaffer optics than I ever have with the store-bought ones that I used to use. Low light, early morning, when that transition where the sun's coming up, you can see the sky lightning, but the ground is still dark and gray. Man, that's when the best time I'm glassing, early in the morning. I'm just standing there, leaning against the tree and just glassing slowly. And I've seen more deer with these binoculars than I used to. And they're great optics for sure.
Yeah. If we could get the viewers to, you know, any of these viewers that go out and buy a Mr. Wingbone's grunt call, I would imagine you're going to have another big buck contest this year. And I know one of your stipulations is that they take a picture with the deer and the grunt call. So
that's the one stipulation that I have in my contest, Rick. I like to see the call in there with the photo. Now, it's not necessary if somebody wants to send me a success story, you know, but for the photo contest, yes. To be eligible to win in my photo contest, the call must be visible in the call. And I think this year for the big buck contest, we're going to do 2 contests. We're going to give away a couple different calls. I'm thinking about an acrylic call for the big buck contest, and then an all wooden call for a secondary contest of the coolest photo. So it allows people to get creative.
Yep. So what are your plans this fall? You got anything big in
mind?
Well,
I got a couple kids that I want to take out early season and hopefully get them on camera shooting a deer. Now, I don't care I'll let them, if they want to shoot a doe because they're tired of hunting, shoot it. I don't care. It's children, just to get them out there and promote our sport, because I think our hunting population's in a decline, and we need to do everything we can to promote it and positively, you know. But I'm gonna hunt early season. I'm gonna do some squirrel hunting with my buddy. We were talking about it. Maybe get a squirrel hunt for the show, and I'll do a lot of water. I'll do a lot of scouting at that time as well on a couple different public properties that I don't have cameras on per se. But
that's one sport that is kind of, in my mind, gone by the wayside a little bit. And I'm going to try to actually get out and do a little squirrel hunting myself this year. I used to really love squirrel hunting. So, but Edwin, listen, time is running down here, and I just want to say thank you for participating on the show again this evening. And
you're welcome.
It's always a good time talking to you. But anyways, I believe I don't want to mention next week's guest. I'm pretty sure I know who it is. I just want to verify that they're going to be on, and I don't want to say one thing and then have it turn out to be another. But it'll be a great show next week again as well. Edwin, thank you again for being on the show. And
you're welcome. I got one thing, Rick, and then I'll be done. I'm going to let you decide on the comments of who wins this call. So you'll announce it Monday. You let me know, and we'll go from there.
All right. Sounds good. Edwin, thanks again. And folks, thank you for coming along. Another great show. We'll see you next Wednesday on the hunt from 6 to 6:30. For now, hey, we'll talk to you later. Good night, everybody.
All right, this time we're going to show you how to sight in the Alpen Apex scope. Now Ryan's got his AR-10 and he's got the Alpen Apex 4.5 by 27. Now he also has the sunshade and the honeycomb on it, and it comes with the scope. And what it does is it filters out all this sunlight that we're dealing with here today. So again, your gun would already be bore sighted like this one is. Take the first shot and then we'll show you how to make the adjustments after that shot. All right, so as I said, the next step was to bring the crosshairs down to the bullet. But before we do that, we're gonna take the caps off and we're gonna pull the turrets off, okay? And there's 3 set screws in there that we're gonna loosen up. We're gonna go ahead and make those adjustments, get everything sighted in, and when we finalize the sight in, we're gonna tighten those set screws, put the turret back so we have a 0 position on it, and then we'll put the caps back on and we're good to go. The next step now is Ryan's gonna hold the bullseye on the red dot, and I'm gonna make adjustments to bring the crosshairs down and over to the bullet. And that's what we're gonna do right now. Pretty close, aren't we?
Yeah, just hair
To the right. I gotta go to the left. It's gotta go left, right? Or not? Yeah, I got to go to the left. Are you on it?
Yep.
Okay, so I think this is right.
Good.
And I got to go down just a little.
Yeah. Other way.
Other way.
Just the side of that red, but I pulled.
So we can pretty much assume that we're on, you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the red.
All right, that's all it takes. 3 shots and we're in the red.